Hi everyone, it's Sue Plumb here, and today I'm going to be sharing a scrapbook process video with you. But first I just want to talk a little bit about the products that I'm actually going to be working with today. So today I am talking about the Dina Wakley Gloss Sprays that come in the Kitaholic Kits March 2021 mixed media add-on kit. So this is an add-on to the regular scrapbook kit that's available, and these sprays is what I am actually going to be focusing on for my project today. So I'm actually not going to be working with the main kit. I'm actually going to be working with these sprays on my background, but I just want to show you, I had a bit of a play with these first, and before I get started on my process video, which I'll add on after this, I just want you to have a look at these. So these are actually an acrylic spray. These are not a dye-based, water-based spray. These are actually an acrylic spray. So it's like acrylic paint in a spray bottle. So you can hear that they've got the little balls in there so that you can mix your paint. So these do have the same properties as an acrylic paint. So they are a plastic-based paint. Okay, so they're not water-based like mists and other products that you've been familiar with, which are actually, you know, a dye in a water base. These are actually an acrylic based spray. So I had a little bit of a play with these, just some different methods just to see how they'd come out on a background, because traditionally I'm not a huge fan of using sprays as sprays, but I did promise that I was going to do something using a spray as a spray. So I'll show you what I've done. So I'll just put these aside. Then I'm going to grab this pile of backgrounds that I have actually had a play with. So, and I'm going to tell you what I've done on each one. So, working with just some white cardstock. This, I believe, is a 300 weight cardstock that I've got here. Just a plain sort of bright white. Now, what I actually did, sorry, there's just a little bug or something on it. What I actually did with this one is I took the two gloss sprays. Now I did all of this outside. Unfortunately, my workspace here where I film is not an area where I can really be spraying paints all over the place. So I actually had to do this out in the yard. So I will actually put some photos up as I go along of a couple of things that I want to show you. So this background here, I actually just used the two sprays and I just sprayed them over the background. Now I allowed the two colors to mix and move and go where they wanted to go, but it basically was just looking for sort of like a patchy application that just mixed the two colors. Now what I did with this is I let it dry off just for a little bit. Now bear in mind it's very humid here today when I've done this outside. I let it dry off for just a little bit, and then I used some paper towel just to blot off the excess. And I'm hoping you can see the color of my result there. You can see how glossy and shiny it is because this is a gloss spray, but it gives this beautiful pastel muted tones in the background that sort of looks like a bit of a watercolor print, and it's really, really lovely. Okay, so that was experiment number one. Experiment number two. Again, I sprayed in a sort of random pattern. I used the two colors and I just went for sort of a mixed sort of background using the two colors and allowing them to sort of mix. You can see that I have sprayed in patches all over the place, but with this one I did not use, I let this one dry off even longer until there was only a few very big blobs of paint left, and then I just dabbed those up with a little bit of paper towel. But you can see the difference in allowing it to dry a lot longer naturally as opposed to rolling off all the big drips straight away. So you can see the difference in those. So the next thing I did was I wanted to create a bit of a mask on the background to see how they would handle a mask. So I actually created this basic mask just using some old household string, which I just scattered on the page, sprayed my spray, and then quickly lifted the string out of the way, and then I was left with this cool pattern. Now this was actually a different cardstock. This is a basil marshmallow, and as you can see the color of this cardstock, can you see the color difference there? The basil marshmallow has actually got a much creamier coloured base than this bright sort of white that I tend to usually use. And this basil marshmallow tends to absorb moisture so much more than the cardstock that I usually use. So you can see the difference there. You can see where it's soaked in to the cardstock a lot more, but you can see that I've got this really cool mask effect on it, and you can see the color of it here. The color of it here is a little bit different to on the white. Can you see that? So in the cream and then on the white. So this is my 300 weight cardstock. So I just allowed this to dry off. I dabbed a few little splotches off at the end, but for the most part that was just left to dry naturally. And then I've got this one, which again I used the same piece of string randomly scattered over the background, spray, and I left this one to dry completely naturally on its own. And you can see it's got some beautiful texture of all the paint splotches, and you can see the pattern from my masking on the background there. So I just wanted to see, before I use a new medium like this, I just like to see how it behaves just on some different substrates and putting it through some different tests. And so yeah, that was the four backgrounds that I actually created. So what I am actually going to work with first, I'll put the other ones aside to use another day, maybe not the marshmallow, because I'm not overly a fan of that yellowy sort of creamy base. I prefer a white base. But I'm actually going to work with this one first, the one that's sort of got this watercolor look to it. And I'm actually going to pull in a paint that was in the January mixed media kit. I'm going to use the stencil from this month's kit, which is from Darkroom Door, and I'll pull in a few other mediums and we'll start building some layers on this. So I will see you soon. Okay, so here I am with my background, which was created with the Dina Wakley Gloss Sprays. And now I'm going to show you how I built my layers on my background to create essentially my own mixed media style pattern paper. So you could do this using whatever mediums you have laying around, but it's just to show you the process of just how much difference little things can make to building up those layers on your page. So I'm actually using the Dusty Pink Kaisercraft acrylic paint that came in the January mixed media add-on kit. And I am just using my wide number 4 brush, which is 2 inches wide there. And I am just using that just to dry brush a little bit of pink, which is a darker pink than the pink from the gloss spray, onto my background, just randomly in a few places. And you can see that I have stopped at a very small amount because you don't want to overdo any one of these layers. Okay, so that's the photo that I'm going to be working with, and seeing as it had, that's me actually, in that yellow jumper, I wanted to pull in a little bit of yellow into the background. Now, I'm actually going to my favourite tool here, which is my fingertips, because let's face it, they are always there. You never have to go looking for them, and don't ever be afraid to get your hands dirty. So I'm just using my fingertip there because you'll see that the fingertip, if you use your finger, it gives you a very different look on the page with the acrylic paint. So I am just using my finger just to rub a few little sort of yellow highlights around the page. I have no particular reason for where I'm placing any of these colours. All I'm looking to do is build up those layers gradually. So now that we've got gloss spray on the background, I've got pink acrylic paint, I've got yellow acrylic paint, both of which were applied using different methods. I'm now going to apply some white acrylic paint using yet another application method. So you can see that I'm using a brayer here, and all I am doing with this brayer and the white acrylic paint is just trying to tone down that colour in a few spots. Just bring that colour down a little bit. But I'm not using a heavy application of paint here because I still want to be able to see through some of it. I'm looking for a patchy application just over the top of some of the colour, but enough to allow some of the colour to also come through. So we've now got 4 different types, or 5, sorry. If you count the gloss spray, there's 2 colours on there. 5 different colours of acrylic paint on the page. And you can see that we've still got a very subtle background. Okay, so now we're going to go in and we're going to build some more layers. We're going to look for something else that's subtle, but will also start to add a bit of structure to the page. So I'm actually using this ledger style rubber stamp, which is from Viva Las Vegas Stamps. But honestly, grab out whatever background you have in your stash there. You can use anything. You can use, you know, sort of dots, you can use stars, you can use anything. Just add a bit of subtle stamping. Now, the color I am using there is actually grey. It's not black. The reason I used grey is because I knew I was working with these sort of pastel tones. If you've done something in a different colorway and you have more bold tones, by all means, use a black, use a blue, use a green, use whatever makes you happy. But just put a bit of stamping on there because, again, it's another layer. Okay, so now you can see I am actually working with the stencil and mask set from Darkroom Door that comes in this month's mixed media kit. And all you'll need to do is get your craft knife and you just cut the little tabs to get the butterflies out of the background. And this gives you the stencil piece and the mask pieces. So that piece that I'm working with there with the outline shape, that's the stencil. And then the inner shape that we've cut away, which is the two butterflies themselves, that's the mask piece. So you'll see that I am using a Distress Oxide and I'm using a sponge dauber there. This is just a cheap sort of one of those makeup blenders. And I am just dabbing through the stencil just to get the shape down on my page. Now, if you don't have this stencil, if you have another stencil, it doesn't matter what stencil you use. This is all about showing you the process of building those layers. And you can see how you can see through the layers to what's underneath. And this is what is going to give your background depth. So now I'm going in with the mask portion of this mask and stencil set. And I'm usually, tongue-tied today, using a slightly darker tone to add the detail over those butterflies. So you can see that. You can see the wing detail there. So I'm just dabbing through using the same technique, but as I said, it's a slightly different color. It's a darker color just to add the detail. You could do this with a black. You could do this with acrylic paint. You could do it with a pen. You could doodle the detail in there, or you could leave the detail off altogether. It's entirely up to you. But as I said, this is all about building those layers. So we've now got 5 acrylic paints, we've got stamping, we've got 2 Distress Oxides, and now I'm going back in with one of those gloss sprays. And you can see that I've just taken the nozzle out of the bottle and I'm just using that to add some big splatters around the page. And my intention here was to leave them to dry naturally so they had that real gloss and that real heavy pigment as opposed to the pastel tone that I had on the background. And then I'm going in with the second colour, which is Mineral, which I absolutely love. It's a beautiful colour. So I've done a couple of big splatters with it, but then I'm going in with a paintbrush because I want to add those tiny little splatters as well. And so that is just pulling together all of those layers. And you can see how that you can see through the ones that are at the front right through to those ones at the back because I wasn't too heavy-handed. I encourage you, if you're not familiar with mixed media, to have a play, see if you can create your own paper like this. If you want to watch the second part of this video, you'll see me put together the layout that I made using this paper. See you next time.